Live coverage of XpoNorth as it happens. This is XpoNorth Live.
Now, it's no surprise that most of the music downloaded from the internet is illegal. And I'm here with one of the partners of Audiolog, the company that aims to tackle the problem of music piracy. Please welcome Tristan Hunt. Tristan, we've all pirated music. I bet you have.
I haven't actually. That's one thing I haven't done. I came from a generation where we bought vinyl, so I got into music by DJing. So I would go to a record shop and I would buy a record, and maybe 4 or 5 because that's all I could afford. And they were special, and I'd take those home and play them and treasure them. And the market changed to a more intangible market with digital media. And I think there's been a point along there where the value of music has somehow been lost. We've moved from the tangible, something which people can pick up and feel and interact with, to something that's intangible, and that in a way has lost some of the value of music.
Have you any idea what the scale of piracy is? Do you have any statistics on this?
Absolutely. Google very kindly produces such statistics on a regular basis. We as a company remove some 1 million infringing links every week for the rights holders that we protect. That's just from across Google. That doesn't include Bing or Yahoo or Yandex, or the actual pirate sites themselves. So the volume of piracy out there is significant.
So what is it that Audiolog does?
Well, we work with partners like Google to remove infringing links from them. By removing those infringing links for a myriad of rights holders, we work with everyone from self-releasing artists and small bands, probably about 50% of our client base. Now we're in 30 countries and 5 continents with our clients, protecting many of the world's biggest indies like Warp, Domino, Mute, Ministry of Sound, Ultra Records in the States. So we work right across the board basically to make it easier for fans to find, interact and buy the music which people put out.
Is it a very technical process that you use in order to prevent piracy? You tag, don't you, particular tracks?
We do both. So we do Watermark promo distribution. So
right.
Labels like Warp and Mute and Cooking Vinyl. We did the Prodigy's last campaign. It was a huge honour for us. We had the Prodigy's manager, Liam, come to us and say thank you. That was the first digital release the band's ever had that hasn't actually been leaked, pre-release. So Radio 1 world exclusives were maximised, no leaks beforehand. That was the first time when it was played on Radio 1 that the fans actually heard it. And so the excitement and buzz was kept with that. And that's the promo side of it. And then going to release, we're actually removing those infringing links. So your iTunes, your Amazon, SoundCloud, Facebook, all of these links rise up onto the first page of Google. So again, fans can find and more easily interact with the artist's music.
So Audiolog offers a technical solution, but do you think that perhaps there's an argument to be made here that we should be educating people not to download, not to pirate illegally, and to look at buying the music legitimately?
Absolutely, and I think that's a conversation for the industry at large to have with their audience. I think there's been a degree of reticence with labels and rights holders where piracy has been seen as this sort of thing where it's not cool to challenge it. Where actually what needs to happen is all of the rights holders from the smaller independents right through to the majors in one voice need to come out and say to their fans, look, if you want us to keep on investing in new talent and new acts and delivering you guys new exciting music, well, you need to invest in us. You need to put that money back in, and piracy is obviously something that fundamentally undermines that.
Do you think the industry's been slow to help people manage the digital and mobile revolution?
It's a really good question, and I think it is probably pivotal to where we are now. There was a point in the late 90s where Napster, which I'm sure you're familiar with, came along and suddenly started sharing music in an unprecedented way. It was a digital revolution which caught everyone off guard, and especially the major labels, which were slow to react. And instead of embracing this technology, they actually fought against it. Whereas at that point, late 90s, early noughties, had there been a collaboration and investment back then, we would have had much greater adoption. The industry would be far further advanced than it is now. That said, we're now at a point where you've got Deezer and Spotify and all of these wonderful services out there which are providing wonderful sources for people to discover music and also to pay back the rights holders some of that music for the works which they're sharing.
Have you reflected on the argument that we're looking at a Pandora's box, that people are now used to the idea of getting music very cheaply, more cheaply than it costs to produce, or entirely for free, and that's the mindset that you're up against?
Absolutely. I think it's again, a very good question in terms of how do we change what is now a cultural thing? How do we address this deep-seated cultural issue where you have a whole generation that's grown up not paying for music often? You know, in my day, I wouldn't have gone into a record shop and like stolen some records and gone to my friends, oh, I've just nicked some records from the shop and like they're really good and they're really cheap. And you hear this conversation down socially in pubs and bars, and people talk about it as though it's something that's vaguely legitimate. So there's a huge piece of work to do. We work with a range of ambassadors, unpaid, people like Goldie, Emeka in Berlin, Anna Wall, Judge Jules, ex-Radio 1, DJs like that, where they don't get paid by us, but they're so bought into this need to have this conversation, to be able to talk to fans and re-educate them about the actual value of music, that they work with us and sit on panels and talks like this to try and help change that.
And I suppose Expo Live North is one of the ideal platforms to have these kind of discussions and to talk to people like Audiolog, because these are bands that are just starting out, and you know, the argument, Justin Bieber or the Stone Roses, they can afford it. That's not the case with emerging new acts who've only worked hard to produce an album and then making no profit at all from it.
Absolutely right. And this idea of investment where you often have an awful lot of small indies where sometimes they're just breaking even. They're often making a loss. You've got labels like BBE, barely breaking even. They call the label BBE, barely breaking even, because it's such a struggle to get that music out there. If you're a major, you can afford to take more of a hit on it, but it's still costing you millions. The scale of economy is different, but the same problem exists, which is, are they going to be more risk adverse by not having that income to invest in new acts, to invest in new artists, to support new music? And that's what we're all here for, is that new music that's coming through. We've got a range of wonderful showcases happening around the city, and without that investment from those labels, big and small, then that's going to stop.
Well, let's hope that we can see the future of music being preserved for a little longer, thanks to organisations like Audiolog. Thank you very much indeed, Tristan.
You're welcome.